Yeah, let the truth be told. Keep it real and we never hold back. Authentic, real life, real problems. We gon' chop it up and we bringing all facts. Only the truth is what we deliver. And it's hosted by Cashmere Camellia. Kick up your feet, there's nobody realer. Truth be told, you best get familiar. Truth be
I
told.
am going to introduce my sister, my big sister at that, Velvet George. And this episode is Sister to Sister. And we're gonna cover truth about living together, about the process of our grievance with our mother passing and our father. And we're just gonna dive on in. Hi.
Hey, girl.
First ever episode.
I know.
How you feeling?
Nervous. Because that, this is like the first time that you're getting Velvet. I mean, being filmed as Velvet and not, as executive director. So it's kind of like nerve-wracking. So, but let's do it.
Right. So can you tell us a little bit about who Velvet is?
Velvet is a child of God. And I'm gonna leave it right there. Because that my story will tell more about myself, the experience, the journey of looking at these videos, of doing these interviews, doing these tapings and talking. You're gonna understand who Velvet is. Okay. So who I want the viewers to know is Velvet is a child of God.
Okay. Yes. So Mia and Velvet, we started living with each other with mom in 2020.
Yeah, so after my father passed in 2019, my mom fell and almost bumped her head of getting in the house late at night, and we just panicked and we was like, we just cannot have mom staying by herself. So she asked me to move in, and I'm like, okay, I don't know. But then I had to drag my sister with me, and I had to beg her to come because, going back home with your mom and you fully grown and you have your own kids, but we didn't want my mom to be alone.
Right.
Especially the relationship that she had with my dad. They've been together since 16. So death hit different when he was gone. So we moved in, happy, little challenges, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, big challenges, because we was in our own world.
Right.
So
it was still an adjustment for me because I was still married with two little ones. So it was a little bit of a challenge. And at the time when I was married, it was a challenge for him too. But we all moved in.
We moved in. It wasn't a challenge for me because I was always at work. And I stay in my little bubble.
Right.
When I'm home, I always stay just in my room and I just recompress. So it wasn't challenging for me. I think it was the challenging part is when mom died. Right? I think because decisions had to be made, and I end up didn't want to be the bad guy, or we had to adjust with living together without mom. Because
that was the real challenge.
Yeah, because that we had not a mediator, but we were so used to living within our own world.
Right.
So when we moved in with mom, it was like, okay, well, we already know how mom is and how she do her rules and the respect thing. But then we just sisters.
Right.
So it's like totally different. So I think that we had to adjust and respect each other opinions, how we live. We don't live too much differently, but we had to adjust into that.
Yeah, that was a lot of challenge in the beginning.
Not for me.
You didn't think so, but it was I feel like it was a lot of challenging because I was not only dealing with mom's death, but the grievance of a divorce, and had to start a whole new adjustment with the kids and then their dad. And, you know,
That was a journey that you had to go through, that I had to watch, and it was difficult to watch because, again, both our parents was gone, and you know, you always had challenges, you know, in life. Not always, but you always had challenges in life, just in general. And you would have your mom and dad, but you didn't have your mom and dad to vent, to cry, to show your frustration. You didn't have that. And I was used to you going to our parents, and then I had to hear it, and then I would get mad, and I wouldn't like that. So it was a big challenging for me with that.
right.
But I'm here to talk about my experience with mom and grievance.
Exactly. So what was your feelings when you first heard the news with mom?
So this was kind of different because actually I was on the phone with her 30 minutes before my sister called me and told me that mom is, we first thought that it was a seizure.
Right.
And my mom, all her life since she was 11, she struggled with epilepsy. So this is nothing new to us regarding her having episodes of seizures. However, my dad used to always take care of my mom, and if my dad wasn't here, Kashmir would be the one to help my mom with her seizures, with her dealing with any obstacles dealing with epilepsy, because that eye will be a nervous wreck.
Right.
So she knew what child was what and what child was good in that. So Cash dealt with all my mom medical. So we was on the phone 30 minutes before I got that call from you. And we actually talked about death. It was a pastor that passed away earlier that day. And she was like, man, that's so sad. And I was like, all right, Mom, come on. I'm at Target, like, you know. And she was like, Velvet, it's okay. You know, death is always coming. And actually, she was picking on me because I had mispronounced a word. And if you know me, I always pronounce words. So my mom used to always be like, no, Velvet, this is what this word, mean. I'm sorry, I'm about to get emotional, but that was our last conversation. It was just like a normal day, talking about things, talking about life. And the last time I heard from her, she said, Vel, I'm just so tired. And I said, well, Mom, go to sleep. I'm working your shift. You better go to sleep, because when I go out of town, I better not hear you talking about you tired. And she was like, yeah, but I'm just tired. And I said, well, Mom, get some rest. And we said we love each other. And then I got a call from you. I was on shift that day with the girls. When you called me, it was like, at first, she having another episode. It's a seizure, she'll be okay. Then I didn't want you to be alone, so I had to call our, a cousin to help you. But I'm still trying to stay calm because I'm on shift taking care of these girls. Right. And we get to the hospital, and my life would never be the same after that. We get to the hospital, hearing the news. hearing the news that we don't know if she's gonna make it. Having just me, you, and BG go into the room looking at her was not. It was hurtful. It was hurtful. Just the 24 days in the hospital, hoping and believing that God would turn that around. It was very hurtful. Not only that, for my experience, it was the worst experience I believe I will ever go through. My grandma always said, if you can surpass your mother dying, you can get through anything. And I kind of believe that, because that was the hardest thing that I had to experience so far in my life. To have to be able to make the decision. Do we keep my mom where she's at, in the state of where she's at that moment, or do we just release her to God? And we had to make that decision. And according to the doctors, we had to make that decision really fast.
They really wanted us on the first day.
First day. For people that don't know, because we're like talking like you guys don't know, my mom stopped breathing. And Cash called the ambulance, and the ambulance came. But by the time she arrived to the hospital, she stopped breathing again. So when you stop breathing, you lose oxygen to your brain. And she lost a lot of oxygen to her brain. So they wanted to say that she was brain dead the first day, because they didn't see any activities. So we was trusting and believing in God that, she was going to pull out of it, and that we was going to see some type of brain activity. And we waited patiently for 24 days in the hospital from April the 19th through May 12th. And we stayed and we waited and we waited and we waited, believing in God for a miracle. And God said, no, not at this time, and my mom passed. So we're going through the journey of the grievance of the journey from the day that I got that call, from the day that she went home to our Father, my Heavenly Father. Although our earthly father, he was probably waiting too.
Right. Right.
But that journey was tough. It was tough. It was because during the process of her being at the hospital, we still had to take care of business.
We did.
We still had to take care of her financial business, because we was believing that she was going to wake up. We knew that it was going to take time to adjust back to her normalcy, but I wanted my mom to make sure. I wanted to make sure that my mom's bills was paid. I wanted to make sure that the rent was paid. Everything was going to be normal when she waked up. But however, God had other plans, and we still had to
take care of everything.
Take care of everything. So I didn't even think that I had time to grieve.
Yeah, because I want to know. Well, how I felt was I was rushing the grievance process. I always feel, I was talking to another person who was dealing with grief with their loved one. And it was like that first year he was dealing with just making reckless decisions. And I had to think about that for myself, like, was I occupying my time making decisions that wasn't really positive to make at the time, and not really thinking about how I'm thinking about now? Well, it'll be almost 2 years. So I feel like that first year, definitely the first year, you got to take the time out for you and let the grievance process begin. Let your emotions begin. Grievance is anger,
Hopeless,
hopeless,
depression.
depression, anxiety, sadness. And how was your first year?
Hell. I had to make decisions that I was judged. I couldn't even grieve my mom because I was in a position where I had to make decisions for myself, for Alicia, for you, for the kids. And I think the first year I was on survival mode.
Right.
I think the first year I was in survival mode. And when we had to say goodbye to our mom, the next day we had to go back to the business and run a business.
That was the toughest.
7:00 in the morning. She passed at 7:00?
Yep.
So, like
At
7,
night.
yeah, at night,
7
p.m. We had to be at the group home at 7:00 in the morning, or I think it was 8:00, to discuss somebody's behavior. I had to deal with that. And then ever since then, I had to make decisions what was good for the business. So I didn't even make decisions what was best for Velvet, of taking a break, of grieving not only my business partner, but mostly my mother.
Right.
So I couldn't even grieve because that was my business partner. So I was trying to keep myself to keep the business alive when I couldn't be that little girl just to grieve her mother. So the first year, it was hard. It was terrible. I had to be judge of what I said, what I did, how I did it. Like, it was crazy. And I'm like, this is what you experience after death?
Right.
So the first year was horrible. Second year, horrible.
Going into the
second year, it's horrible. But the reason why I did this video, because I'm still in my process of grieving and healing. But the reason why I definitely want to support you of doing this, but I also want to let someone know, if you're watching this, if you hear this story or this journey that we went through, or if you are going through something, or need to prepare yourself to go through something like this, trust the process, trust God. During this process, a lot of people thought, oh, she ain't gonna make it. The business gonna fall. She gonna lose her mind going crazy. The reason why I haven't lost my mind is because that I was in the presence of God. And that's what saved me. When you go through challenges and struggles, yes, you're gonna go through all these type of emotions. But if you trust God and have a relationship with God, even when he say no to your prayers, he still have the comforter to comfort you. So don't be discouraged. Don't give up. I know during these emotion roller coasters that you're facing, dealing with grief, if you give up, you will never know the rest of your story. What could have happened, how your story could end. So I just encourage you to get into God's presence. It's not easy said done when I'm doing that every day, fighting, and despite of the emotions that I'm feeling, I have to put my trust in God and be in the presence of him. So my experience was a journey. And also, when you when you give your life to Christ and when you in his presence, you find yourself. And my whole life, because that, me and my parents was very close, I had a lot of trust in them. And I had to learn to trust God because now they're in a better place. But now I am still here on this earth and I have to learn how to trust God. And in the beginning, it was challenging. You're going to know and find yourself during that process. I remember the time when I was working and I was thinking and I was just writing, and God revealed to me, he said, was you working for your parents or you working for me? And that changed my life. You know how like he knows the answer, just like he asked Adam
Right.
in the beginning, but he wanted Adam to let him know. But he already knew, what you did, why you did it. So God was asking me, and he already knew the answer. Was you working for your parents or you was working for me? Because he wanted me to know and figure it out. So all of these emotions, yes, you're going to go through that. But when you get in the presence of God, he will reveal a lot to you, reveal who you are in Christ.
Right.
So grievance is very hard and difficult, but we all have our time that we have to go. And one thing that I loved about me and my mom relationship was we settled a lot of things before she passed. Of course, we didn't know she was going to pass, but because of our relationship,
Right.
we used to talk on the phone for hours. We would just talk and have conversations, and it would have me to talk about, things in my childhood that I would never ask her or question her in my childhood. But because that we have opened a safe place for both of us, we can ask those questions. And it's like, Mom, why you did that? Or what you was thinking? Like, all these questions. And what I loved about it was she never denied my questions. She never said, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to deal with it. Of course, she was like, here we go again. Because if I asked last month, I probably asked 3 months later.
Right. Because that's you.
I ask, I don't know why I do that, but I just ask questions all the time and it'd be the same questions. So she'll be like, here we go again.
I think you're trying to look for a different response than
I
people.
don't know. But that's what I do. But she answered every question that I asked, that I had for her before she passed.
That's a blessing. I think I already told you that. It's so many questions that, not so many, but it's some certain questions that I would have loved to had more time to discuss with her or talk to her about. But I think we covered what she could. Of course, we didn't know when she was leaving, but we were able to cover things of what I was going through at that moment. And because I was going through, why are you laughing? And because I was going through a divorce, she was there for those moments. It was crazy moments. But she was there. She was there in the moments of processing of a divorce and taking care of 2 kids. It was what?
I'm just like, dang, I miss my mama. Because them 2 kids need that Lolita.
They had her, and yeah, I wish they would have had more time with her as well. Because certain things, I wasn't in my right mind as I was dealing with a divorce or finding my purpose in life. And I feel like she knew that. And as a mother instinct, it's like, okay, let me be there with the kids sometimes. Let me talk to them, or Cash, you shouldn't do this and that. And because I just wasn't in my right mind to even focus. And that's crazy. I feel like grievance for me after mom passed and now we don't have our parents.
Girl, I was like talking too much.
Huh?
I was talking too much, and you was like, at the end, you're like, so the grievance for me, because I was
I don't know.
was
I was
talking
just
forever,
saying-
like acting
No,
like this was my video.
No, but it's sister to sister. So I want to know, but just in my progress with grievance, I feel like I'm just now finding myself. And that's crazy because it just took all this time for me to, well, for God to redirect me into like, hey, I'm gonna need you to focus on this and that and that.
I think you always knew who Cashmere is, but that comes with family. This person. Now you have to be Cash without them. And that is like the struggle. That's like the reality. That is like...
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
it's like I have to
to
come up front.
Right. You don't
And
have
it's
your
like,
mom. Right. You don't have your parents to, help you, direct you a good answer for what you're asking for. Like, for example, if I wanted to leave and work at Walmart, I will want my mom advice.
Girl, I can give you that advice.
I wouldn't even do it. I was giving it like just a general.
Yeah, that's true.
Just a general. I mean, even through your divorce, at least you had mom in the beginning to direct you and be like,
Right.
hey, this ain't.
At the end, it was definitely like, okay, I understand.
Yeah. I'm glad you was able to get that comfort, because just imagine you going through this by yourself. Yeah, we sisters, we cool forever, but I'm not going to be your mama.
Right.
And your mama comforts you. You know what I'm saying? When your mom give you your answer, not your answer, when she give you advice, you be like, yeah, you're right. Like, that's the reassurance.
Yeah, but that's kind of like, it's not kind of like, but I feel like that's what we should be relying on Christ.
Correct.
And that's why I feel like that's where we in a position of like, okay, we have no choice but to lean on God.
Right.
Now we don't have our parents. Are we going to have that same faith with Christ of saying, okay, yeah, you're right. That comfort, that ability to know, like, I heard him, I'm going to react to it, and I'm going to move because he said I'm good. So, okay.
Like, you know that you know that you know.
Right.
Like, yeah. I totally get it.
But I guess because it's physical, we here on earth, and it's
we have been correct. Like, for example, like I had to cry to God and tell him like the honest truth of how I was feeling. That's all I know was, my parents since I was born.
Right.
So if I have a problem, I'm going to my
easy.
parents.
Yeah.
That's all I know of the flesh. But when I got saved, I had to learn you had to go to God. But it was, I'll go to God and my parents. You know what I'm saying? Because I still had that comfort. I still had that reassurance of humans being here. But now it's like, hey, what up? It ain't nothing but you and God. And that's how he wanted. Because, in the word, it says, if you love your mother and father more than me. So when you realize that, it's going to be a blessing and a good thing to hurry up and unlearn what you learned all these years. I'll tell my child, Lisi, all the time, hey, love God more than me. I don't care what you see every day. I don't care what you feel. God is God.
That's how I do with Ariel and Elijah. Talk to God. When you mad, when you crying, talk to him first. Because you're going to need him more than you need me.
Right. And also, it is hard to detach yourself
Right.
from your parents, even when it was just taken away from you. You know what I'm saying? We in our 30s, like sitting there crying, like, girl, you better. What mama say? Put your big girl panties on. Well, shoot, you should have gave me a bigger size, or I should have got a bigger booty, because them big panties I couldn't fit.
I can't fit nowhere near.
I don't want them panties.
Or them shoes.
I don't want them shoes. I want them panties. I want a kid size panties.
Right. I want to be Elijah and Ariel.
I don't want to go through that, but it's growth. It's growth.
Yeah, it is growth.
And that's what we have to just continue and just remember all the things that our parents and our mother definitely taught us. She taught us a lot.
Right.
You know? What's one of the things Mom taught you?
She always said I was a firecracker.
And you are?
I calmed down a little bit.
Because of God?
Right. Right. But I feel like one thing that I can say she taught me is to not react certain ways. Like, because I'm a firecracker, I see you and me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry. That's what she told me. I'm sorry that you've seen that in me. But
she did?
Yeah, she told me that. One day I was being a real firecracker, and she like, I'm gonna need you to calm down for real. I'm gonna need you to calm.
Well, she didn't let me be
down.
a firecracker. She wanted to be my like.
I'm gonna need you. Maybe she seen herself, and it was like, whoa, that was whoa.
Right.
I'm gonna need you to calm down and just trust the process of calming down, relying on Christ.
Right.
But I feel like she always redirected me in the word. In scriptures.
Baby, she always did that.
And she backed it up.
She backed it up with
parents backed it up with the scriptures.
They will always say something and say what the scripture says.
Right. And I will always carry that because I will want somebody to back it up.
With the word.
With the word. Mm-hmm. What you saying? What's one thing Mom taught you?
She always used to say, Velvet, when you realize that can't nobody put you in a heaven or hell but God, you're going to be all right. And that's what I'm realizing today.
Well, what's one of the things your dad taught you? I'm talking about your dad.
That's your dad.
Our dad.
Be good to people, and they'll be good to you.
Yeah, I can say that. I can steal that.
Mm-hmm. He taught me business. He said, if you take care of your staff will take care of you. Mm-hmm. Mama
Both of them was humble.
They was.
And givers.
Givers. For real.
Yes.
Ma always told me to give and it shall be given unto you. Gave me the scripture about that. Or she would be like, Velvet, people are funny. People are real funny. And I'm believing that now.
Right. So I love that we were able to sit down and kind of dive in the grievance process. We're still in our healing. It's only about to be 2 years come, I say April.
Right.
I know we had to pull that plug in May, and that was the toughest decision we ever had to make. And like you said, going through death with parents, you probably can go through anything and come out stronger.
I had that attitude when I was going through. Man, my mama died. What you talking about? When they were like going through it, I'm going through it. Girl, my mama died. What you talking about? Yeah.
So I'm glad we were able to sit down, and I know we in our healing process now still. And I wanted people to see the rawness and the truth about how we're feeling, how we're adjusting,
Mm-hmm.
and how we still gonna make it through. Cause we would.
With God.
Hey, sister. We're gonna like,
Truth be told, best get familiar. Truth be.